All right. I believe we are live. I'm going to check my YouTube stream and make sure that we're good. This is episode 1, so going to figure this out. And I heard that YouTube has a 10-second, so here we are. Perfect. And hopefully you guys can hear me. Let me check and make sure that you guys can hear me. Yep. Awesome. Guys, welcome to the Professional Wingman podcast. 15 years in the making. I'm there, guys. I'm here. I'm doing it. This is episode 1. I'm really excited and humbled to be here. And hopefully through these podcasts and all the things that we're going to do, which I'll share in a moment, can impact some lives. And we can have some fun doing it. And so for those who do not know me, my name is Thomas Edwards Jr. I'm the founder of The Professional Wingman, and The Professional Wingman has been around for 15 years. We've been helping men, women, and everything in between, helping them live better lives, primarily through helping them get into long-term committed relationships. Now, The Professional Wingman became a household name because I would go out with my clients and in real time give them feedback on what was preventing them from making romantic connections. And since then, we've helped people not only get into relationships, but get married and have kids and deal with being in marriage and parenthood. And I've helped guys stay in these relationships. In fact, we've been responsible for, at this point now, over 400 marriages, and right now 0 divorces, which is pretty cool. So right now, batting 1,000. And I will own that until that changes. But we also help people change different parts of their lives. We've helped people lose weight. We've helped people start fresh after a breakup. We've helped people get sober. We've helped people ascend in their personal wealth. We've helped people just so many different things. It's hard to keep track of. And one of the things that really brings it all together has been people's self-confidence. I remember a good friend of mine back in the day, Court Johnson, used to tell me that, dude, you sell confidence. And I didn't believe it at the time. But over time, I've noticed that when my clients become not just confident, because confidence is what you say to other people about yourself. But when you become self-confident, all of a sudden your life takes a different direction. So hopefully by being here, you get to enjoy, you get to learn, and you get to have some fun on different ways that's going to elevate your life. And so I have a lot of notes here. Here's what we're going to talk about on the show. We're going to talk about dating. We're going to talk about relationships. We're going to talk about life. There's going to be interviews. I'm going to have guests on here, and they're going to share their story and how they got to their level of greatness. You know, my mission is to help you guys achieve the impossible. And the only way I know how to do that is to coach you beyond your potential. And we're going to talk about what coaching is and what it isn't, and whether or not that's something that you should look into, whether it's with me or anyone else. And I would love for you guys to comment. I would love for you guys to participate. I'm going to look at comments and I'm going to check them out periodically to see what's come in, and we can have a little bit of banter back and forth. And also, just for my own personal love of this, if you can give me a thumbs up, if you can subscribe, I'm going to be doing these podcasts pretty regularly moving forward. I'm going to try to keep it around this time as well. And whether it's every week or every other week, you guys will be notified when they happen. So be sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and share this with other people so they can check it out too. So let's get right into it. You know, I really want to talk about the state of dating and relationships in 2024. Now, as many of you guys know, this is election year, which means this is the year of chaos. And this is not just the year of chaos and uncertainty in America. This is happening globally. I think there's, 50, 60, maybe 70 really influential elections that are happening around the world that may determine the direction. They'll actually not may, it will determine our future for the foreseeable future. So how does this even, what does that have to do with relationships? Well, the abundance of what's going on, the distractions, the chaos, the uncertainty, this easily has a hold in people's dating lives. And where I want to really focus on is on, the, this is what I talked about before, app fatigue, dating app fatigue. There's a video that I actually put up. I'll post it here so you guys can check it out. But I actually talked about how Match Group, so they own Match.com, Bumble, Tinder, and a few other sites. Well, they've had a decrease in signups, in membership, and people are actually moving away from the apps. In fact, there was an article that was published. You can look it up. Bumble had to lay off, either roughly 300 of their employees. I remember someone had commented, Bumble had 300 employees to lay off. Well, Bumble actually had over 1,000 people employed, and they had to lay off 30% of their staff. So it's a lot. And I anticipate more are coming because people are getting tired of how the algorithm isn't supporting them in what they want, which is to be in a relationship. And so what's happening? What's going on? Well, online dating is, I still believe, a great resource and a great supplement to your dating activity. I think it's a great platform. I don't believe it should be the only platform you use. Doesn't matter how old you are or how young you are. But the abundance of choice, this is the bigger thing. The abundance of choice has created an abundance of confusion. And I personally believe the way to get clear is to get offline and look for the intangibles that really allow you to see if someone's a viable partner, not just the metrics. One of my good friends, Mike Wayne, had posted on Facebook, if you're not 6 feet, you're not making 6 figures, you don't have a six pack, give up already. And obviously it was a joke, but there's a lot of people, a lot of men out there who believe that if they don't have these things, that they have no shot. Now, here's the reality that I'm going to give you. If you don't have those things, you will be at a disadvantage in comparison to those who do. That's just the reality. But it doesn't mean that, one, you can't work towards those things, and two, you can leverage what you already have and develop skill sets that'll put you in better position to have the relationship that you want. The problem that I often see with many guys, especially when they come to me, is they either aren't willing to do the work, or they need the push to do the work. And if you are of the former, then you are at disadvantage and you might as well give up because you already have been giving up. But if you're someone who knows that they need the push so they can change their lives, then it might be an opportunity for you to find someone like a coach to support you in getting off your ass and doing something to improve your life. Now, as men, I also have the belief that we need more leaders in the world. I don't feel like there is strong leadership in America, and we certainly don't have people that we can look to and say these guys are heroes. And if there are heroes, which I believe there are, we don't hear about them because we're in an influencer space that is designed to take our attention away from things that really matter. So because of that, we need more leaders. We need more men stepping up and being the force that attracts people to them. And I feel like, especially with 2024, our country is in a very desperate place where we need strong leadership. And this is just my opinion, but do not wait for the government or the executive branch to get their shit together so you can get yours together. That's not how it works. If you want the life that you want, and you want, when it comes to dating, relationships, money, life, more, then you need to take personal responsibility and start taking consistent action now. Now, you may know what to do and you may even have the skills, but if you aren't where you need to be, then getting a coach may be the best investment you'll ever make now or ever, honestly. And let's talk about what coaching is and what it isn't. Coaching is basically an experience that brings out the best in you. If I were to just really keep it super simple, it's about getting the best out of you. So you come in here with a vision, you have a challenge, and the coach who's there is supposed to really push and get the best out of you so you can go out and not only overcome that challenge, but be able to fulfill and experience your vision. Now, here's what coaching isn't. Coaching isn't someone who trains you on skills. That's a teacher. Someone who you don't replicate your skills. Their skills. That's a mentor. And listen, as someone who's been doing this for 15 years, I've done various levels of training, mentoring, consulting, and coaching. And there are some of you who actually do lack knowledge. And so you definitely need teaching, someone to teach you. And some of you might lack skill set. So you might need a trainer or a mentor so you can develop the skill set. But many of my clients that I work with, when I get together with them, they have both. And the thing that is always the issue is that they're not sure how to perform at the highest level. And this is what coaching basically brings together. I've been around plenty of people in my life, plenty of clients. I've worked with thousands of clients in my lifetime that have the tools, so to speak, whether it's on paper or even they even have some of the intangibles. And there was something that I had said on Facebook that I wanted to just reiterate to you guys to really understand why it's so important for you to know who you are and what puts you in the best position to succeed and to be in that position at all times to get to your goals is something that I wrote on Facebook, which is, the tools that you have are only as good as the man using them. But if the man doesn't know who he truly is, he may never realize that he's using the wrong tools. So I'll say that again. Tools are only as good as the man using them. But if that man doesn't know who he truly is, he may never realize he's using the wrong tools. And so what coaching does is it helps you see who you really are and to get you to rise to that occasion, to rise to that level that you're meant to. So you can go out there and live the life that you want and maybe turn that into being able to help other people do the same. So now I'm not going to be here and kind of sell coaching to you guys. That's not my intention here, but I wanted to really speak to that because there's a lot of people out there who think coaching means something that it's really not. And they go into that situation with very false, the expectations are just not accurate. And so hopefully that gives you guys some clarity around what you really need. If you feel like you need skills, then maybe getting a mentor will support you. If you feel like you need knowledge, which isn't really an excuse today because of what's available on Google and YouTube alone. But if you need that additional knowledge, then hiring a trainer, hiring a teacher would support you. But if you have those things and you want the next level, coaching will help you get that. So with all the chaos that's going on and all the complexity and all the confusion that dating is bringing together, how do we simplify the process that can give us the best chance of getting into and staying in a quality, long-term, committed relationship? Ideally with someone that you can see a long-term future with, that you find attractive and that's compatible with you. Well, a long time ago, I came up with a process that I called fearless dating. And what fearless dating is an 8-step process that will help you understand exactly the milestones that you need in order to get into that relationship. And I'm going to give you the whole framework on this podcast today. This is something that I've charged thousands of dollars for. And I really just want to make sure that from the basics of understanding how dating works, that you guys have this framework and can use it. And maybe you guys can also see where are the gaps, where are some things that you're really strong in, and where are some areas where you're not as strong and could use some support. So we're gonna get into that. Right before we're gonna look into the comments, I see HUD's here. Getting a coach truly changes your life. I totally agree. Not because I am a coach, but I've also have been coached and am still being coached by some of the best coaches in the world. And I can say from firsthand experience, it is a true game changer. I think coaching is a luxury, although it is something I believe everyone should have, but it is a luxury because of the investment, not just of money, but of your commitment and time and energy and resources. It's a luxury. But if you have the ability to do it and you're committed to it, it can change your life as it has for mine. So let's get into the 8 steps towards getting into a relationship. I'm going to keep it super, super simple. And if you have questions or if you want to comment on certain ideas, feel free to post here, and I'll take a pause after step 4 and we'll look at the comments. So step 0. So I'm just going to start right off with a little bonus. Step 0 is, what do you want? Like, yes, I understand that there's many of you out there that want to be in a relationship. Maybe some of you guys are here who want to stay in your relationship. Maybe there's some of you guys who are married who, want to keep that marriage strong. Maybe some of you guys just want to enjoy your single life. And maybe it has nothing to do with dating at all. Maybe it just has to do with some other area of your life that you want to create a change in. Well, my question for you is, what do you really want? And then my follow-up question to that is, why do you want that? And then my follow-up question to that is, why do you want that? And I want you to be as specific as possible. I remember when I was 22 years old, I sat down at a Starbucks in Boston on Boylston Street, and I wrote out what I wanted my day to look like from the moment I woke up to when I went back to sleep. And I talked about the smile on my face when I woke up. I talked about the clothes, specifically what I was wearing, the blazer, the pocket square, the nice jeans, the shoes, and how I was walking down the street and people were just noticing me because I looked and I felt good. And the ability to go into conversations and meet people that I knew and meet people that I didn't know was so effortless, and women loved me and they asked me out instead of me feeling like I had to ask them out all the time. Like I was so dialed in the details, and I read it every single day, sometimes 2 times a day. And I really just dialed and embodied that. If you take the time to write down what you want your life to look like 6 months from now, 12 months from now, it'll really be very clear the steps that you need to take in order to make that happen. And then in the regards to dating, who do you want in your life? We can always talk about she needs to be attractive, she needs to be a certain type, or he needs to be a certain height and he needs to make a certain amount. But like, how do you want to feel? When you guys wake up and you guys have the day off tomorrow, what do you guys actually do? Do you do things together, or do you spend time apart? Because oftentimes I see on those days, a lot of people that I work with that are in relationships end up spending the day apart, and that's not what they wanted. So what is it you really want it to look like? What do you guys do together? Where do you guys go? How do you guys enjoy each other? How do you guys connect? What do you find really interesting about that person? What do you appreciate about that person? What does that person do for you that makes you feel seen and heard and loved and supported and appreciated? Write those things down. Be as detailed as possible. And then go into the whys. Why do you want that? What is that going to do for you in your life when that comes into your life? And then the why for that. And typically that second why is the real why. And that's the real thing that you want. And where the real work begins. So staying on the dating track, that's step 0. Then we get into step 1, which is what I like to call lifestyle optimization. If you know what you want and the type of person that you're looking for, ask yourself, what are the odds that my current lifestyle will allow me to meet that person? And on a scale from 1 to 10, if it's beneath a 7, then I suggest that you look to optimize your lifestyle to be more conducive to meeting that type of person, both online and offline. So what does that look like? Well, online obviously is being on a couple apps, 2, maybe 1 mainstream app, there are a lot today, and maybe 1 more niche app. I'll share a niche app that I thought I find to be pretty interesting towards later on in this episode that I think you guys will enjoy. Optimizing your profile, making sure that you have great photos, the right amount of photos, the different types of photos, making sure that they're clear, that it's just you and not you and your friends. Having pictures that show your lifestyle, not you with a fish, not you with your shirt off, not you in the bathroom. Like real photos that genuinely speak to who you are and how you live your life. So that way, from a digital perspective, someone can start to envision what their life can look like. And for as many people who are on Instagram and you see the kind of the snapshots of what you think their best life is, that's what your online dating profile could kind of look like. If that were your online dating profile, I bet you get a lot more response. So really take the time to do that, and also spend time with the text. Be honest, be open, and make sure that you use specific words in your profile that can attract people. Things that you're into. If you love to travel, you can show a picture of you in a place that you recently were, or you can include that into your written profile. I'm giving basics here, right? But some of you guys actually do not do this. So have your online dating profile set up. And in addition to that, because we're in today's world, have that represented in other social media platforms that you use. I'm not saying to get on these platforms, because depending on your age, it may be irrelevant. But if this sounds, if this resonates, then I suggest you go onto your platforms and update your Instagram, update your Facebook, update your LinkedIn, because when people look you up, they're going to go check these things out. And so make sure that your digital presence and your fingerprint is clean. Offline, what are you doing that's making yourself more conducive to meeting these people? Are you going out? What kind of things that you enjoy doing? Are you part of certain groups? Do you go to certain events? Are there activities that you do? There's places that you go. One of the biggest things I notice that a lot of guys do, and I think women do this as well, is they don't do enough in their lives. They just go to work. Maybe they hang out with their girlfriends or they hang out with their guy friends, and then they go home. Like, that's it. And then they wonder, like, and then they just focus on online, which I don't feel like is the best strategy that's going to help you meet the person. So you have to be willing to go out there. You have to be willing to find these things. You have to be willing to put in the work. And yes, it can be hard work. I'm not afraid of saying that it's hard work to get into a relationship, just like it's hard work to get your dream job. It's like it's hard work to get the house of your dreams, or to make money, or to have a healthy lifestyle. It's all hard work. And you are looking to be in a relationship, in theory, that's going to last the rest of your life. It's going to be the person that is going to spend the most time with you than anyone in your life. You're going to spend as much time, you're going to spend more time with them than you will sleep. And you sleep a third of your life. And you're going to be with this person for more than that. So I think the idea of putting in hard work and putting intention into this part of your life, I think, is reasonable. And so get yourself out there so that way you can meet more people in person. And here's an interesting area that I noticed when working with certain clients. Now, I've noticed that if you don't, let's say you don't perform well online, meaning your photos aren't that great, or maybe you're just not that desirable. We've seen studies that show, like, Black men, Indian men, Black women, Asian men are considered undesirable. Well, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be online. You should look at apps that may have a higher density of your demographic and be on those apps. And you should spend most of your time and energy and efforts meeting people in person, because that's where you're really going to make a splash. When you meet people in person, living your everyday life, there's a lot of things that people are willing to forgive because they feel your presence. And if you have those intangibles that they can feel, a lot of the metrics that they're looking for and putting in their search parameters online go out the window. So this is where the true value of meeting people in person and creating a lifestyle that's conducive to doing that is so important. So that's what I got about lifestyle development. Step number 2 is, now you're out there, whether you're online or you're offline, and now it's time to engage and start approaching people. Well, for us guys, the number one thing that we're always afraid of is rejection. And gonna give you guys a little spoiler alert. Rejection doesn't really go away ever. It just doesn't. Whether you are dating, in a relationship, married with kids, empty nesters, there's always going to be a conversation. There's always going to be a question that you're going to ask that person that in somewhere in your head, you're going to think that there's a possibility that person is going to say no, and it's going to feel like rejection to you. I don't believe that'll ever go away. I think you get used to it. You get comfortable with it. You don't let it sway your decisions and your behaviors, but it doesn't ever go away. So I wish I could tell you that you'll never lose the fear of rejection. It's not the truth. And anyone who tells you that is lying to you. It's not the truth. The fear will be there, but it doesn't have to stay as long if you work on it. And so this is where courage comes into play. You have to be willing to be courageous. And if you have a little bit of courage, you can work on that, just like any other emotion, any other feeling. It's like a muscle. So the more you're willing to develop it, the stronger and the more bolder you'll be. And you'll see how that progresses over time as I go through the steps. My simple strategy around approaching is about 3 C's: context, confidence, and content. And my theory, my philosophy around this is that if you have the first 2, the third doesn't matter. The number one question I get from guys when it comes to meeting women is, what do I say? That's the number one question. Number 2 question is, what do I say after that? And I can, just through tests, and I've done probably, I don't know, I don't want to be too like ridiculous, but I've probably done close to 10,000 approaches. And I've had thousands of clients do dozens of approaches, and I've been able to see it happen. And I've also done my research of watching tens of thousands of people approach each other and engage in conversation. The one thing that I know for a fact is that it does not matter what you say. It doesn't. If you make it matter, then it will matter, but it does not matter. Context becomes the ultimate solution. If you can use your observational skills and your creativity to come up with different things that you would say based on what you're observing, then you'll naturally create a situation where it feels comfortable for that person to engage with you. This is actually applicable to both men and women, but I'm speaking to the men specifically here. If you are observing something that's going on and you make a comment or even ask a question that is related to the context of what you're about to create, of what's going on in front of you, it will feel as natural as possible. Now, add to that your confidence. And that confidence is about body language, right? Because the words that you say, let's look at the percentages, right? 55% is body language, 38% is tonality, and I think grooming. And then the other, what's that? 5%, 7% is actually what you say. So many guys come to me with their number one question about something that only matters 7% of the overall interaction, right? So confidence now comes in the fold, and this is where you get to really have the upper hand in a conversation, because now you're taking care of the 55%. Now that 38% with the tonality and grooming, I mean, I hope I shouldn't have to say this, but just make sure that you're groomed well and make sure that the tonality comes through. And I actually had someone just remind me of a technique that I would have my clients do is right before you're about to say something to someone that you don't know yet, take a deep breath and then talk. And you'll notice that when you do talk, your voice carries a lot further, especially if you're in noisy environments, but it also is stronger, and it causes such a jolt, so to speak, that they will look to see who's talking, because they don't necessarily respond to a soft voice, but they'll definitely respond to a strong voice. But that aside, How do you convey positive, confident body language? Well, simple things like taking a deep breath so that way your posture corrects itself, keeping your shoulders back, your hands out of your pocket, maintaining eye contact. Smiling is something that's super important. Slow, intentional movements. I think the list can go on, but those are some basics of being able to approach appropriately. And then once you have those two things, like I said, the content takes care of itself once you master the context. So a great exercise I like to give my clients is go people watching, go environment watching, see how people are interacting in different environments. And if you can get close enough, eavesdrop on the conversation, hear what they're saying that's starting the conversation, or certain things that they're saying that's escalating the conversation, that's creating more chemistry, and just take notes and think about, well, what would you say in that situation? Come up with different things, improvise, start to develop this part of your brain. So that way, when you're in those experiences, you don't have to feel like you need to be robotic, or you have to figure, not listen to the person because you're thinking about what to say next. It can come more natural to you. So I'll leave it there, and then we can move on to the next area, which is the third most common challenge I've heard, which is about flirting. And flirting is so necessary for the escalation of a romantic relationship, because it's a key part of establishing physical chemistry and sexual tension. It doesn't always have to be that way. I want to make sure that's clear. It's not 100%, but more often than not, it is necessary. There are some who are very intellectually focused that creates that sexual, physical connection, that tension. But it's not as common as the norm, which is you need to flirt. And my philosophy around that is, it doesn't matter how fun the conversation is. If you're not flirting, you're just two friends, two people having a fun conversation. That's it. So I will give you a very simple way of looking at flirting, and it's through the flirting formula. And the flirting formula is, in parentheses, complimenting plus teasing to the power of touching and proximity. And so how I break down this formula is, you want complimenting and teasing to be somewhat equal to each other. It doesn't have to be completely, but somewhat equal. You don't want it to be too lopsided. If you are complimenting way too much, chances are you might be seen as too nice. If you are teasing too much, you might come off as a jerk. Now, this is also relative to the perceived status of the person that you're talking to. And just because that person you believe is so hot, if she's so hot, it doesn't mean that you need to actually tease her a bunch just to bring down her self-esteem. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is, you might need to be more playful in your conversation to create more comfort and to show that you're comfortable having that type of conversation with a woman of her caliber. And so being aware of that as well. And then the touching and proximity is key. So imagine you have this equation here, right? Anything to the power of 0 is 1. And I always say 1's the loneliest number in the game. So if you want to really emphasize and create more impact in your complimenting and your teasing and the dynamic and the push and the pull that's happening, then you want to amplify it with some touching and some proximity. I use a very simple way of thinking about it as like the arm, elbow, shoulder strategy. So when you first meet someone, chances are you're shaking their hand, maybe even giving a high five, and that's like an arm's length. And over time, what you want to do is you want to get in between the space between the distance of your arm and your elbow. And once you're at your elbow length, this is what could be considered the radius for your personal space. And oftentimes, you'll notice that when people aren't as intimate, they're not as comfortable, they're always going to be outside your elbow space. Unless you are at a place that's really, really loud, that forces that to happen because they need to hear what you have to say. But more often than not, it's your elbow. Once you're able to get inside of that space, then you can start to really build some more chemistry and tension there as well through various flirting techniques. And yeah, and I think that's Where flirting really comes into play is you're trying to build comfort with the idea of you two being in each other's personal space. This is, yes, it's with the intention of trying to get to a place where you guys are having sex, but the macro view of this is about creating physical comfort and intimacy and trust. And that is so necessary in the dating process, especially when you're first meeting someone. So guys, I get it. You want sex, and that is okay. That is how we're biologically wired. Women, understand this. If you're hearing this, that this is what guys will do. It's not the only thing that they're after, but it is something that is very important to them, because that is it's a validator trigger for them. And I'm not saying giving that an excuse for you to give it up. I just want you to be aware that if guys are trying to escalate, it's because that is something that is important to them, and you guys can talk about that as it goes on. Moving on. Now we're into conversation. This is step number 4. This is where you start to build more emotional intimacy, deeper connection through getting to know each other. And the best way to get to know each other is to share stories. I'm a huge proponent of learning storytelling. There are some amazing storytellers out there. I think some of the best comedians in the world are great storytellers, and they practice it and they practice it and they rehearse it. And they're so good to the point that they know when the audience is going to laugh and when they're not going to laugh, and how to develop the punchline. You don't need to be at that level, but if you can share things about your life, about yourself, that indicates more of who you are, and also ask questions or make open-ended statements, ask open-ended questions or make statements that allow her to share, and you're able to listen actively, and you're able to reflect and respond and commend them for sharing such things, this is what creates intimacy. You might not have to like the same things, but if you guys can have a familiarity with the same feeling. I'll give you an example. So when my wife and I started dating back in the day, she really loved yoga. I did not love yoga. I really loved video games. She did not love video games. And we ended up trying out each other's things, and we realized that we didn't really like those things, but we really supported each other's joys. My love for video games, her love for yoga, because we knew the feeling. That was a shared feeling that we both can connect with. And we wanted to, and if I can express to her how it feels, then she feels like I get her. And that creates more comfort, and that makes her like me even more. So these are the things that you want to look for when you're in conversation. It's not so much about the what, it's about the why, and it's about the how. And if you can really connect those, you're going to create really deep connected conversations. I'm sorry, that wasn't step 4. That was step 3, because we started at step 0. So step 4 is something that I like to call bold moves. Bold moves is my favorite part of this, because you can use bold moves at any stage of the game. And bold moves are simply doing things at the risk of rejection, being told no, being told not yet. And it's the only way to progress the relationship, progress the interaction to a more deeper, intimate, romantic level. Especially as a guy who needs to position himself as a leader of the relationship, a leader of the interaction, it is your responsibility to make attempts. Now, it's also important to be able to read the cues to see if the signs are there for you to escalate, but you may not see those cues. You may not even be able to read those cues, but if you are interested, then you can take that bold move and see what happens. And listen, guys, like I told you before, rejection is always going to be a part of the game. There's going to be multiple times in one interaction where you could get rejected. And it continues throughout the next interaction. It continues on the first date, the second date, the third date. This is why I say rejection is always going to be a part of the equation for the rest of your life. And so the more you get used to the feeling, the less it sticks around. And so understand that bold moves or just about things that you can do to escalate the conversation even further. It can also start from the top. You can approach someone, and instead of just trying to be somewhat like, as I like to say, come from the side, so to speak, where you're trying to be uh, innocent and unassuming, you could just be open, bold, and honest, and say, "Hey, I had to come over here. I thought you looked absolutely gorgeous, and it was something about you that just made me want to come over and introduce myself. My name is Thomas." That's a bold move. And you can do those type of things in flirting. You can do those type of things in conversation, and you can do those type of things in asking someone out. And we'll get to that in just shortly. But those are the first 4 steps, including step 0 of getting into a relationship. And I want to take a break here because I want you guys to take time to download and just ask yourself, what insight are you taking away from this? What is making sense? What are some things that you're hearing that you actually do really well at? Maybe there's some things here that you do really well. And what are the gaps that you still have? Is it the approaching? Is it the flirting? Is it the deep conversation? Maybe you're not going out. Maybe your online dating profiles aren't that great. Where are the gaps? Where could you use more support? I just want you to think about that for a little bit. And yeah, so let's move ahead. We're going to move ahead into the last 4. They're going to go by a lot quicker. And it's really about asking someone out and the first 3 dates. So there's a little preview. So the asking out. Once again, my philosophy is you should always ask someone out if you're interested in taking them out. You should just do it. You can almost call it a bold move, but you miss every shot you don't take. You thank Wayne Gretzky for that one. But if you are interested and you have some signs that there might be some mutual interest there, ask her out. One of the things that I used to get really just annoyed by is guys trying to get the number. And these days, guys trying to get the Instagram, the IG. And I would always ask, like, why are you getting the number? Well, so I can call her and ask her out. Well, she's right here in front of you. The best chance, the best odds of her saying yes to you asking her out is right here, right now, while you're talking to her. The moment you walk away, she's probably checking her phone and seeing all the messages that she may have received on other apps and from other guys that she's talking to. If you let her go, the next day may roll through. And if you're not responding the next day, she might be meeting other things. There's also distractions, there's work. I mean, there's so much life that's happening after that moment. You may not even exist by the end of the next day. So nail the opportunity for you to see her again by asking her out. And then the number is a virtual certainty, because then it just becomes a means of logistical communication. Ask for the date. Use the conversation skills that you've developed and the conversations that you've had to find an opportunity where you guys can create a shared experience, which would be a date. So if you guys, the most common example I like to give is if you guys are into food, you guys are foodies, and you share the places that you've been to, and she hasn't been to one of those yet. Boom, I'm taking you there. We're going to go out there this weekend. They have the best ramen. Listen, I know you've had ramen, but you haven't had ramen like this. Let's go this weekend. That is where you get to take that momentum and turn it into a date. And when you do that, then everything else, just like I said, becomes a logistical guarantee. You don't want to get someone's IG because they're going to be inundated with so many messages, especially if that someone is someone you find to be really attractive. So get rid of that stuff. Get what it is that you really want. You're alleviating yourself of an extra step, because that's all getting that number is doing for you, is then trying to make it happen as an extra step when you could just make it happen right there and there. I'm beating a dead horse, but I see too many people doing it, and I still see people doing it. So it needs to be said again. Get the date, then the number. Get the date, then the number. Awesome. So now we're in the first 3 dates. Now, whether you've met this person online or offline, the same thing applies. So before I get into the dates, I want to kind of connect this to online because some of you guys might be wondering, well, how do I do all that in an online message? You don't. You don't. What you want, your goal when you're online dating is to get offline. That is what online dating's purpose should be. I think online dating companies have forgotten this because of their business model, which I can't blame them. But your responsibility for using these dating apps is to get offline. So in today's world, I would say 10 years ago, maybe 12, 13 years ago, you could get away with 10 back and forths before meeting that person online. Today, things are happening so fast that I recommend anywhere between 3 to 5. I mean, 5 is like pushing it. But after 3 back and forths, because of how many people are trying to interact with each other, if you can keep someone's attention for 3 back and forths, you guys might as well see each other. And what's different between an online date and an offline date is that when you're meeting someone offline, you've already felt the chemistry. You felt it with your body, you were present to it. So that becomes a first date. You've already met each other. When you're meeting someone online, it's not a first date, it's a first meet. Because you got to make sure that there is chemistry. You also want to make sure that that person looks like they are in their photos. You want to make sure that they're showing up the way that they represent themselves digitally. And that's just going to take some time to figure out in that first meet. And then when you have that first meet and you like it and you guys are mutually into it, then you can go on that first date. But let's talk about the first date and the first date framework that I like to use. So I'm a big believer keeping it short, keeping it fun, ending it on top. So what does this look like? Well, you want the date to be anywhere between 45 minutes to an hour. Now, that could be the equivalent of 2 drinks. That might be the equivalent of a drink and an appetizer. But that's it. Like, I don't care how great you guys are getting along. You want to cut it short to create more of that desire to see each other again. You just have to do it. We want instant gratification too much and it backfires on us because then we have these 9-hour dates and then you get wiped out. You run out of things to say, not because you don't have anything else to talk about, but it's because you're tired. But the problem with that is that's going to be her last impression of your date. And she's going to walk away and saying, I had a lot of fun and he was really nice, but we kind of ran out of things to say and the energy kind of died. And that is not how you want the date to end. So 45 minutes to a half hour max. You also want the date to be fun and set the tone. When you see that person, tell them how great they look. Give them a hug. Really make sure that it's clear that you two are not just friends hanging out and that this is an actual romantic date, even if you guys are just grabbing a couple of drinks at the bar. Speaking of which, do your best to find a position where you two can be close to each other. So many times people will sit at a sweetheart table or at a dinner table and be across each other. That looks like an interview. If you were walking into a job interview, that's probably the position that you guys would take if you were seated. This is not a job interview. It feels confrontational when you're just right in front of each other. But when you're sitting next to each other, it becomes more collaborative. You guys are co-creating the experience of the date. Plus, it creates an opportunity for you guys to break the physical barrier and get comfortable being next to each other. Even if you're not even touching each other, just being in each other's more personal space will create that comfort that I talked about in flirting and proximity, where it can become more natural to then physically engage each other while on the date. So if you can find a place at the bar, whether you're either next to each other or if it's at the angle at the end of a bar to be kind of at a 90-degree angle, I think that's pretty ideal. That way you guys can both see each other without straining your necks. That is ideal. And you want the conversation to be fun. You want it to be flirty. You want it to be playful. You want to ask some questions that are lighthearted just to enjoy, right? Ask kind of fantasy style questions or like, hey, like if you had the day off, what would you do tomorrow? Or like, what's the number one place on your travel list that you haven't been to yet? Like some other fun kind of dreamy ideas just to and share your experience, share stories. It's just about having fun. The primary purpose of a date is to see if you can have fun with that person. And if you can have enough fun with that person to see them again. That's all it is. And then you want to end it on top. This is where the time constraint comes into play. Chances are, if you guys are feeling each other around the hour mark, maybe the hour, 10-minute mark, you guys are feeling great. You guys are sharing a laugh with each other. You guys got a couple drinks in you. You're enjoying it. Now's the time to start to wind down the date. But before you do that, you start planting the seeds, or maybe even starting planning the second date. So you're doing the same thing that you did in step 6, but you're doing it on the step 5, but you're doing it on the first date. And in that first, and so what you're saying is, so you're finding the opportunity for, say, hey, you know what? I got this this great live concert that's happening right now. I got extra tickets. Why don't you come with me? And notice how I'm not asking, I'm suggesting, I'm telling. It's a sign of confidence. Doesn't mean that she can't say no. It just, you're just saying it very confidently, and you're inviting her into the experience. Oftentimes the answer is yes, because you're inviting her into an experience that is appealing. Now, if she does say no, what you want to do is notice if she's willing to collaborate with you on an opportunity to see each other again. That's the definitive sign if she's actually into you. If she's not making the attempt, chances are she's not that into you. Doesn't mean to try harder. I wouldn't even recommend that. I know some women will play that game. Do not play that game with them. Get them to be open and honest, just like you should be open and honest. And say, great, well, if now is not, if you're not able to come, do you want to get together next weekend? Oh, I'm busy all week. Oh, okay. Like, I guess it doesn't seem like you're really into this. That's okay. I get it. That's fine. It was great to connect with you tonight. They might be like, what do you mean? Then if they get into that collaborative space, then it's good, right? But like, you're dating for the purpose of being in a relationship. So don't allow the gameplay and the ambiguity to steer you away from what your primary purpose is, which is to find that person to be in a relationship with. So everything that you talk about, including the logistics of the date and the invitations, they're all part of that. Then we got date number 2. Date number 2, I love. I actually recommend. It's a little bit longer. I don't put as much of a time constraint, but if you're spending a couple hours, maybe 2.5 hours, that feels pretty good. And typically you're going to 2 places. So you're meeting up at one place just to get together, to ground, to connect. Sometimes you're meeting up after work. And so you just need a little bit of that time to get into the groove again, and maybe have a drink. And then you're bouncing over to the actual experience. And this is what I talk about. You want it to be an experience that you two can share together, whether it's a comedy club, whether it's an ice skating rink, live jazz, walk around in the park, whatever it may be. Let it be a shared experience that you two can have. Because the next question that you want to have is, I can have fun being with this person, but can I have fun doing things with this person? And that's the second question that you want answered on the second date. And so then you go and you have that experience, and you're doing all the other things that we talked about. You're flirting, you're having conversation. The conversations are starting to get a little bit more intimate, not super values based yet, but still a little bit more depth. You're being fun, but you're creating a little bit more depth. You're revealing a little bit more about yourself and the who you are, more so than the what you are. And then date number 3, this is the area where, you could get together and have dinner, where it's okay to sit across from each other, or I still recommend sitting perpendicular or next to each other. And you can start to have more serious conversations about shared values. What do you guys want in the future? What are some non-negotiables? Do you want kids, not want kids? Do you want to live in the city, not in the city? All those things. You don't have to talk about all of them, but make sure that those conversations are coming up, that the things that are really important to you are coming up along those lines. Now, it doesn't mean that those conversations are off limits in the first 2 dates. I've just found that when you are with someone and then you get into the values conversation, it becomes less confrontational. It becomes less of a thing that needs to happen or else. and it gets you back into like the human connection. It doesn't mean that you're going to forgive or ignore difference in values. Sometimes that may happen. You have to be very discerning and considerate about that. But you're more willing to do that at that level than you are when you're first meeting someone. And I'm not talking about kids or no kids or things like that, where like if you want kids and that person doesn't want to have kids, like if you really want to have kids, like that person's not compatible with you. And maybe that's something that you may want to know earlier on, and that's okay. But a lot of the other values that I hear men and women talk about can be had later on in the interaction. And that's when you can have it over dinner. You can enjoy yourselves. It can be, you're there for a while too. So you can just literally be comfortable. There's no speed in it. And you're just enjoying each other's company, right? Because here's the thing. You guys are going to have a lot of dinners together. And can you guys enjoy having dinner together and having various types of conversation about your future, about values, because these are conversations that you're going to continue to have for the rest of your life. So that is what you're looking to have answered on date 3. Now, after date 3, oftentimes my clients are in a position to determine if they want to pursue a long-term relationship with the person that they're with. And oftentimes when it's a yes, it turns out really good. When it's a no, then they move on. And I'm of the faith of, I'm on the philosophy of hell yes or hell no, meaning like there's no, you date until it's one or the other. Like you can't be on the fence forever. And you also can't ignore being on the fence. My wife, who used to be an online dating coach, author of Love at First Click, The Ultimate Guide to Online Dating, one thing that she talked about, and I agree with this because I've seen it myself, is that a lot of the people of a lot of our clients who got married to who we would call maybes. When she would present these people to her clients, they would say, maybe. And the people that she would present where they were like, oh, hell yeah, actually ended up turning to be hell no, because they looked like their perfect match, but they never were their perfect match once they got to meet them. And the maybes didn't necessarily look like their perfect match, but when they met them, became their perfect match. So what I took away from that is if someone is a maybe, you're on the fence, you date them and you spend time with them until it goes to either yes or no, because it will get to that place, but you deserve to see it out and make sure that you're doing that. So that ties up basically the whole equation here, the 8 steps to getting into a relationship. So we started step 0, which is what do you want? Why do you want it? And why do you want that? Step 1 is approaching. 2 is flirting. 3 is conversation. 4 is bold moves. 5 is getting the number. 6, 7, 8 are dates 1, 2, and 3. And this is the system that I've used for over a decade, helping my clients get into a long-term committed relationship. Of course, there are nuances and details underneath, and I can't get into all of them right now because then we'd be here all night, and I don't have all night. But if something is in the way of you being able to implement these 8 steps effectively in your life, and you'd like to have someone, maybe a wingman, by your side, coaching you to become your most desirable, your most confident, your most attractive self that gets you in the relationship that you want, then let's have a conversation. You can go to TheProfessionalWingman.com/apply. You can apply. And if your application is approved, I will personally reach out to you and we'll schedule a time where I can give you the coaching experience of your life. And if at the end you want more coaching and you know you need that to help you get to the next level, we'll take those next steps. So not seeing any comments right now, which is totally okay. We'll see them later. So with all that said, I've given you guys basically the framework of the blueprint to getting into a relationship in 2024. Well, what does the future look like in dating? You know, with everything that's happening right now, what's the future look like? Well, I have some ideas. As someone who's been in the game for over 15 years, I've seen some stuff and I've seen some trends over the 15 years. And I've been pretty accurate with my predictions around what dating looks like. And I've talked about it amongst my friends, but I've never outright said it publicly on a consistent basis. And so I'm going to give some predictions as to what it's going to look like. So here's prediction number one. Dating apps will always be a thing. It's going to be around. They're not going to go away. You know, businesses aren't going to fall apart because there's a lower usage base. I think it actually will help the apps because it'll force them to focus on the user, not on the business model. And they're going to provide more, I want to say more features. Not going to provide more features. They're going to provide a better user experience that's going to help more people get offline. It's not the best in terms of their business model, but if more people were to refer to them, then they'll have a sustainable business model. So I mentioned before, like there's always going to be apps out there, and there's going to be new apps that pop up because I don't know if you've heard the phrase, the riches are in the niches, but there are always going to be niche apps and sites that you can go to that's going to help you connect. For example, an article in Fortune magazine features a guy who created a dating app based on your credit score. And so it's called Score. And basically you put up your credit score, and it's just an interesting way. He calls it an interesting way to have conversation. But, you know, in today's world where we're talking about economy and money and all these things, I find it really interesting that that's a way where you can connect with people. I'm not sure how much credit score matters in the theme of love, but I get it from a business side and I get it from a personal finance side. You know, access to loans, access to credit. If you want to get a house, you want to build a family, those things are going to be important. If not, they may set you back some time. And if you're looking for that, that might be something that's important to you, and you want to find that out sooner than later. So I get it, but it's just an example to show you there's always going to be different apps that come out that are going to support certain types of people who are looking for certain types of things. I don't think that'll ever die. And so online dating will continue to be a great supplement to your dating activity. It should just never be the only supplement to your dating activity. Prediction number two, countries are going to continue to struggle creating a future for themselves due to their profit now economics. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but the birth rate across the world has lowered dramatically, particularly in some of the bigger countries in the world, particularly Japan. They've been struggling the most. Actually, I'm going to talk about that before I talk about the next thing. An article on Fox News. Japan's government urges action as country sees lowest number of births since 1899. And Japanese marriages also saw a decrease, dropping below 500,000 for the first time in 90 years. Why is this a big deal? Well, Japan also has the biggest population of older people, like people 90 plus and older in the world. So when we're having less births and a lot more old people, what we're seeing is then a great depreciation of the population. And then that immediately impacts the economy because then there's less people in the workforce for an economy that's continuing to grow. And there's a lot of reasons of why this is happening. You know, the number of babies born in Japan in 2023 fell for an 8th consecutive year to a record low of just over 750,000, marking a 5% decline from 2002. Marriages also saw a decrease by about 6%. And so there's a lot of concern around, and by the way, you know, I forget the exact numbers, but for Japan, I think it's 0.9 or maybe just over 1 child per household. But I don't think Japan has a child restriction law like China does. And so that's why it's really concerning. One thing that I also want to point out that is also really concerning is that America is not that far behind. America's birth rate, I think, is 1.7, which is also pretty low in the grand scheme of things. You know, so for example, Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshimasa Hayashi told reporters Tuesday about the ongoing declining birth rate is at critical state. He says the The period over the next 6 years or so until 2030s, when the younger population will start declining rapidly, will be the last chance we may be able to reverse the trend. There's no time to waste. What they're talking about is also the biggest crisis that Japan faces. And I guess people are talking about why this is happening. Well, a lot of it's happening because younger Japanese people are balking at marrying or having families due to bleak job prospects, the higher costs of living, and how that exponentially increases when you have kids, and salaries and corporate cultures that are not compatible with having both parents work. And so these are major factors. And if this sounds familiar, it's because this is also something that we're going to see happen in the States. That's going to be a prediction that we're going to start to notice if we don't consciously reverse that trend. But I also have noticed that this is also a symptom of this, or maybe the reason of this is around rejection. A lot of men don't want to approach women because of their fear of rejection. So when enough men are not approaching women, that means there's not enough interactions, which means there's not enough chemistry happening, which means there's not enough dates happening, not enough relationships, on and on and on. So really, this is why I started this podcast talking about the importance of having leaders, men, step up as leaders. They need to be the ones to lead the conversation and just be willing to take the risk for what they want. Because I mean, countries and economic systems are literally at stake. And we're sitting here and we're worried about whether or not our feelings are going to be hurt when a woman is not interested in us. Come on, guys. There's a lot more to not just your future, but the potential legacy you can leave behind when you have kids. So something that I'm really paying attention to, especially over the next 5 to 10 years. Another thing that I'm paying attention to is AI. AI has hit, and it's a wild storm. And in the dating space, there's going to be a lot of great instances where AI is going to help the user improve their ability to date. And there's also going to be an issue with how people are using AI to connect, particularly around AI chatbots. And if you've ever seen the movie Her, that's what's going on today. There are people out there, especially in Eastern culture. It's happening also here in the States, where people are building relationships with AI chatbots. And inside an article in The Verge, why people are falling in love with AI chatbots, from Tinder to Replica, generative AI is transforming how humans use dating apps and even spurring real people to romance AI chatbots. So a lot of different things, but Verge reporter Amelia David covers many AI chatbots, specifically AI romance bots, quite a bit. And so she talks about two big trends that are happening in parallel. So dating apps like Tinder are using generative AI to help their users tailor their profiles and craft the perfect messages to send to potential matches, which can be good and bad, in my opinion, because if you can't come up with the messages and it doesn't sound like you, it can totally backfire. But if it's in alignment with things that you would say, then it could work. And getting that level of assistance, I think, is important. I just am not sure if I would trust AI to do those things, but we'll see. And Amelia has also covered a new startup, Valar, which offers an AI chatbot version of you. This is where it gets really crazy, which can then go and message on your behalf with another person's AI chatbot to see if you're a match before you connect in real life. So an AI version of you is now going off to connect with an AI version of you and connecting. And if it works, if they tend to hit it off, then the idea is that you in real life can hit it off. So this is where I feel like AI can really just kind of mess things up with our ability to interact with people, because we're so avoidant of rejection and we're avoidant of these things that we're willing to go to any lengths to avoid it, which would include having two AI chatbots talk to each other. So very, very weird. And then there's AI companions. For example, like those from the company Replica. Replica encourages people to treat chatbots as friends, therapists, and even romantic partners. There's some people who are using these tools right now to form meaningful connections with AI, even if the actual tech under the hood is a ways away from what you might see in movies like Her. I disagree. I feel like it's here now. And so AI will continue to have an influence, and hopefully we can see better discernment in how we use it. There's definitely going to be people who are going to go through the ways of using it to avoid rejection and avoid relationships, to create what I call synthetic connection, synthetic stimulation. And let me just say here, guys, like, social media has primed us for this. And if you don't believe me, when you scroll and you check in on your friends and you see people that you know or don't know, notice your emotional response. How connected do you feel with that person? And it's always going to be based on how much you followed that person. There are people that I haven't seen in person in years, but I know exactly what what they've been up to, how many babies they've had, where they've traveled to, because I've seen them on social media. So I have this feeling that I'm connected with them, but the reality is that person's living their life and probably not even thinking about me. How crazy is that? But that's just the reality. So I have this synthetic connection to someone who may not feel even anything from me, but I'm being satiated. And then we have things like OnlyFans, which, YouTube, please don't ban me for saying it. But we have things like this that are available for people to avoid real in-person human connection and the hard work that's required to create that. Hard work that's required to create that in the form of paying someone else to form a synthetic connection. So this has been happening already for years. It's been priming us, and now AI is just going to accelerate that. So we're going to see that. Get ready. And then we're also going to see other people using it for really productive purposes to get offline. Now, going back to the story of like childbirth and it being an issue, I just wanted to throw this in there because I thought this was pretty interesting. People are trying to do everything they can to stimulate childbirth, to stimulate people having babies, so much so that people are willing to pay a large fortune. The article is not coming up. Let me see if I can find it here. It's not coming up, but basically, there's a billionaire boss of a construction company based in South Korea that's paying his employees $75,000, that is US dollars, to have babies. And they are also paying people those $75,000 per kid based on when they had the baby, when they retroactively. There's such a need for more kids that they are actually paying. And they're also doing other things like helping pay for a child's college tuition to promote the ability to have these kids and to not feel the economic strain that can come with it in today's world. People are really choosing not to do it because of economic reasons, and it's legitimate. And the downside of that is if it's too expensive to raise a kid, then it's going to be too expensive to run a country, a state, a city, because there's not going to be enough of a workforce to handle the production volume. So, and I'm not trying to think of it, I'm not trying to speak about it in an economic way, but the two are connected. And I would be foolish to think that it's not. The two influence each other. So there needs to be a solution of some kind. And hopefully that can be resolved. But there is hope for the future, guys. I know I mentioned a lot of doom and gloom, but there is hope for the future. And it might just look a little bit different. It might be what I like to consider an analog approach. I remember back in 2020, I had a conversation with someone. They're like, where do you see technology, influencing dating? And I said, well, I think by the time we hit 2020, we're going to experience an acceleration, maybe a peak of how we use technology to connect, to communicate, to do all these things. And it's going to feel like we're super connected. And it's something's going to happen. It's going to switch. And we're going to go to what I call the analog phase, where we're only going to use technology as a form of logistics and very simple communication. So that way we can use it to get offline and connect. We're going to be so starved for human connection that we're going to not rely on technology, but use it as a means to get together in person. Now, I had no idea that COVID was going to happen back in 2010, but look what happened. All of a sudden, COVID happened. We were at home, huge surge of dating, of activity in dating apps. got oversaturated. People got dating app fatigue, are now going offline. Now people are coming back to reality and looking to connect in person. Like, it's happening. So I see that being the trend that's going to continue with Gen Z. And in an article posted in Time, why Gen Z is ditching the dating apps. It's a great article that talks about how Gen Z is the first generation that is connected by technology from birth. And there's a growing trend of dating apps being where people go to find partners in the US. Gen Z seems to be opting out. And according to a 2023 Statista survey, daters in the US between the ages of 30 and 49, who are mostly millennial, make up 61% of dating app users, whereas Gen Z comes in at only 26%. Hinge's 2024 date report, many Gen Z daters cite fear of rejection and being cringe amongst their top concerns. This is what I was talking about before. The fear of rejection is just limiting people's ability to even make connections, which is influencing everything else. Of course, most of us fear rejection, but in a tech-mediated world where ideas and people are liked, upvoted, attacked, or labeled, things can feel simultaneously impersonal and very personal. Gen Z daters may find a harder time putting themselves in a vulnerable position. Here's what's interesting. Generally speaking, dating apps are losing their appeal with daters of all ages. There's an increasing feeling that algorithms are helping them find what they want. Gen Z is more critical of what apps have to offer. This generation has a focus more on self-care and authenticity in dating than previous generations. And dating apps fall short of the types of genuine, easy connections they're trying to make. So what Gen Z is doing right now is they're not opting in the dating apps, and they're seeking partners either in person, either at school, through coincidental meeting through friends, or just being out in the world. Amazing. They're actually going out there and they're trying to connect with people through their life. What a novel concept. It sounds old-fashioned, but dating a friend or someone from their community may actually reduce those feelings of stress and anxiety that Gen Z face in the dating app environment. I still believe that we need to overcome this fear of rejection. But as a society, I also know that we cycle. We're very cyclical. And we're in a space right now, thanks to technology, that we have lost the desire to want to overcome a very, very important fear, which is of being rejected and not feeling good enough. And as men, if we can overcome that, it'll accelerate the cycle where we can get back to, the 80s and the 90s, where it was totally normal, totally okay to approach women and meet women in everyday scenarios. And I've been doing this for 15 years, guys. So I know that it still works. It's still effective. Probably the most effective approach that's out there. I don't think anything beats meeting someone in person, because even if you meet someone online, you have to meet them in person to seal the deal. So I think it's super important. And I see a trend where Gen Z, they're going to be the trendsetters. I can't believe I said that, but they're going to be the trendsetters of getting back to the basics of what it means to connect, which is in person, and really doing it in a very natural, organic way. They're doing it. I believe all generations should be doing this. And so if Gen Z can find a way to make it work, despite their fear of rejection, then everyone else doesn't have an excuse to be able to do the same strategy and get the results that they're looking for. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to be sharing more interesting stats and articles in future episodes, whether it's by myself or with people that I have on here. But I really appreciate you guys being here. I have no idea how long I've been on here, but it's just been fun. And here's where to find me. If you want to subscribe, please subscribe, like this, give it a thumbs up. You can also find me on other social platforms at TheProfessionalWingman. I think on Twitter, I'm at TheProWingman. And once again, if you're ready to take your life, whether it's in dating, in relationships, or elsewhere, to the next level, apply for coaching. Let's have a conversation, a life-changing conversation. And if you feel like this is for you, we'll take those next steps, like I said. But thanks again, everyone. I really hope you enjoyed this. And I'm going to see you next time. Take care.